Ever try so hard to be productive, you actually become useless? I'm talking about the kind of person who schedules every 15 minutes. Color-coded calendar, alarms on the hour, a to-do list with a table of contents. And at the end of the week, they sit down, bone-tired, and stare at a pile of work that somehow got bigger. Now listen, I read a book called Hyperfocus by a fella named Chris Bailey. Bailey's whole idea is this: attention is the most important ingredient in a productive, creative, happy life. Not time, not energy, attention. And your brain has two modes it needs. One pushes hard, the other wanders. Most of us run one and starve the other. That reminded me of a story. A woman who went to the coldest, quietest place on earth to do the greatest work of her career and nearly ran herself into the ice doing it. Her name was Dr. Anya Volkov, 39 years old, marine biologist. Spent her life studying the tiny green things that live under frozen oceans. The algae that feed every fish, every seal, every whale in the polar seas. Brilliant woman. Divorced, no kids. The kind of person who put her whole self into her work, because her work was the love of her life. And she had been chosen, one of 6 scientists, to overwinter at a research station on the Antarctic ice shelf. 9 months. No flights in, no flights out. Just 6 people, a diesel generator, and a sky so dark, the stars looked like spilled sugar. Anya had a plan. Oh, did she have a plan? Before she ever set foot on that ice, she'd laid out a spreadsheet with every single day of the 9 months mapped into what she called hyperfocus blocks. 14 hours a day. Microscope at 6 in the morning. Data entry at 8. Sample prep at 10. Lunch at noon. 22 minutes exactly. Writing from 1. Analysis from 5. Reading journals from 9 to 11. She was going to publish 3 papers, maybe 4. She was going to come out of that winter with her name on more research than she'd produced in the 10 years prior. This was going to be, she told her sister before she left, the most productive winter of my life. Week 1, she was a machine. Week 2, she was slower, but she pushed through. You push through. That's what you do. Week 3, something cracked. One Tuesday morning, and there aren't really mornings in Antarctic winter, the sun just doesn't come up, but the clock said morning. Anya sat down at her microscope, looked at a slide she'd looked at 100 times before, and couldn't remember what she was looking for. She stared at it for 40 minutes. Her hand was on the focus knob, her eye was on the lens, and her mind was nowhere, just gone, static. She went to the mess hall to get coffee, poured it in her mug, forgot to drink it, found it cold on the counter 3 hours later. That night she cried in her bunk and couldn't tell anyone why. Now here is where Bailey would stop me and explain what was happening. Bailey writes about something he calls your attentional space, the amount of mental capacity you have to focus on and process things in the moment. He says if your brain were a computer, your attentional space would be its RAM. And here's the thing, it's small. You can only hold about 4 meaningful chunks of information in it at a time. And when you overload it, hour after hour, day after day, with no relief, it doesn't just slow down, it crashes. Anya had been running her RAM at 100% for 21 days straight. The machine wasn't broken, it was overheated. That's when Gus found her. Gus was the station cook, 68 years old, former merchant sailor, one of those faces carved out of weather. 30 years overwintering on and off. Didn't have a PhD. Didn't want one. Just cooked, played cribbage, and watched the scientists arrive every summer with their big plans and their bigger coffee mugs. He came into the lab that night with a bowl of soup, set it next to her microscope, and he said, "Doctor, you're running the engine with the brake on." Anya blinked at him. "I've seen 12 of you come through here," Gus said. "The ones who burn out all look the same. They think pushing harder is the only gear. But there's another one. You gotta let the mind off the leash sometimes." And then he did something strange. He reached into his apron pocket, pulled out a little hardcover sketchbook. Blank pages, cheap paper, the kind you'd find in a gift shop, and a stub of a pencil. "Draw something," he said. "Anything. The soup, the stove, that green goo in your dish. 20 minutes a day. No purpose." Anya almost laughed. She was trying to publish. She was trying to matter. And this old sailor was handing her a coloring book. She put it on her shelf. She did not open it. 2 more weeks went by. She got worse. Her data entries had errors in them. She'd write the same observation twice. She snapped at a colleague over a thermos. One night, she walked outside in -50 wind chill without her parka zipped, and only noticed because her eyelashes froze shut. Then came a Sunday. The station had a tradition. Sunday afternoons, no work, just rest. Anya had always ignored it. She'd always worked straight through. But that Sunday, she was too tired to work, too tired to even pretend. She sat in the common room, stared at the wall, and the sketchbook was sitting on the shelf across from her. She picked it up, opened it, clicked the pencil, and with no real reason, no plan, she started sketching an algae cell. Not from the slide, from memory, the way she saw it in her mind. The little chloroplast, the cell wall, the way it clung to its neighbours in a chain. 20 minutes passed, then 40, then an hour. And somewhere in the middle of that hour, her pencil drifted over the page and her mind drifted with it. And she thought, funny. The cells I collected from the 2-meter depth looked clumpier than the ones from 4 meters. Why didn't I notice that before? She sat up, she went to her logbook, looked at her data. The data didn't show it. She'd been logging cell counts, not cluster patterns. She'd been so focused on what she was measuring, she'd missed what she was seeing. She pulled 3 weeks of slides, looked at them fresh. And there it was. A depth clustering pattern nobody in her field had documented. The algae were organizing themselves in layers, the way a forest has an understory and a canopy. It was an entire undiscovered architecture, hidden in plain sight under the ice. And it had come to her not at the microscope. It had come with a pencil in her hand, sketching nothing in particular. Now here is where Bailey becomes essential, so listen close. Bailey says there's a second mode of the brain, and it's just as important as hyperfocus. He calls it scatterfocus, where hyperfocus points your attention outward at one thing on purpose. Scatterfocus points it inward. You let the mind wander. You hold a problem loosely. You do something simple. You walk, you shower, you cook, you sketch, and you let the connections make themselves. And here's the line from Bailey that'd knock a hole in most people's calendars if they ever heard it. He writes, "Just as hyperfocus is your brain's most productive mode, scatterfocus is its most creative. Both. You need both." Bailey talks about 3 flavors of scatterfocus. One's for capturing what's cluttering your mind, one's for crunching a problem loosely, and the third, the one that did its work on Anya that Sunday afternoon, he calls habitual mode. You pick a simple task your hands already know, and you let the big mind behind your eyes go wherever it wants. Bailey says the research shows this mode is the most powerful one for connecting ideas you didn't know were connected. Anya had been running hyperfocus 14 hours a day for 3 weeks and had gotten nowhere. She ran 20 minutes of scatterfocus with a cheap pencil and found a pattern she'd been staring through for a month. Now don't get me wrong, Bailey isn't telling you to throw away hyperfocus. That man loves hyperfocus. He says it's how the real productive work of your life gets done. You pick one meaningful thing. Clear the distractions. Set a time. Bring your attention back every time it wanders. But he also writes this, and I want you to hear it. Attention without intention is wasted energy. Anya had mountains of attention. She had no intention behind where she pointed it. She'd scheduled her days like the brain was a factory running one shift forever. Brains don't work like that. They work like tides. Push out, pull back. You need both motions. By the end of that winter, Anya had published one paper, not 3, but it was the paper of her career. The depth clustering discovery put her name in every textbook in her field for the next decade. And she'd filled that sketchbook cover to cover. Algae, soup bowls, Gus's hands peeling potatoes. None of it was productive. All of it was the soil the breakthrough grew in. The morning the supply plane finally came, 9 months later, Anya hugged Gus goodbye on the ice. And Gus, with that weather-carved face of his, said, "Tell them about the other gear, Doctor. Most of them haven't found it yet." Let me ask you something, friend. Sit with it. When was the last time you let your mind wander on purpose? Not scrolling, not consuming, not optimizing. Just a walk with no podcast, a shower with no plan, a pencil on a page with no goal. I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments. Because I'll bet you anything. The last real breakthrough you had in your life didn't happen at your desk. It happened in the shower, or the car, or the walk home, when you finally let the machine idle for a minute. Most of us aren't running our engines with the brake on because we're lazy. We're doing it because somebody sold us the lie that more focus is always better focus. It's not. Chris Bailey wrote Hyperfocus to show you both gears, how to push hard when pushing hard is the job, and how to wander well when wandering is the job. If you've been running yourself flat, please go pick up the book. It's called Hyperfocus. Read it slow. Read it with a pencil. Maybe even a little sketchbook. And if this old grandpa's story meant something to you tonight, do me a small kindness. Tap that like button. Subscribe so I can find you again next week with another story. Because the most productive thing you'll do this year might not happen at your desk. It might happen when you finally let your mind off the leash.